Welcome back, everybody. Thanks again for joining our Transitioning to Learning and Development Conference. And we have our second session of the day, and actually the final session of the day. To be totally honest with you, I was trying to fill another session later today, but then my son has soccer practice, and I just wanted to be able to go to soccer practice because he's not going to have any games this weekend since it's a holiday weekend. So we're just going with two sessions today, but lots of virtual table discussions are happening. I saw earlier it looked really, really crowded out there. And after we wrap up with Joelle here, there is one with Kayleen in a feedback workshop that she has. And then also Rick is coming back. Rick Jacobs from yesterday is coming back to talk about applying graphic design to training, which incidentally, probably next or this month, maybe towards the end of the month, I am going to try to put together a graphic design for instructional design event. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you at that one. All right. So we have Joelle Edouard here for transitioning or transitioned, navigating the in-between, and sort of a little backstory on this one. We had a private Slack channel going where we were talking about and organizing this event. As you can see, if you look at the producers for this event, Joelle was one of them. And she wanted to do this one, which I think is a fantastic topic, really can apply to a lot of those of you out there that are transitioning into L&D and are kind of in between things. And just a little bit of info about Joelle. Joelle is a former teacher whose teaching career served students ranging from ages 12 to 85 and spanned 2 continents. Joelle, what continents were those?
North America and Africa.
There you go. Awesome. Joelle now designs, develops, and facilitates professional development experiences for teachers and runs her own freelance editing business. Joelle, thanks so much for doing this. One more question. Why was it important for you to do this one?
Because, I took a while to figure out if I was even transitioned or not. Fun fact, I think I more or less figured it out when you said, hey, do you want to do the session? I thought, wait, me? Oh, wait, yes, I can do that. So I figured there would be a lot of people who are probably in similar situations or navigating the other gray areas of transitioning.
Love it. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and hide myself from the stage and let you take over. Thanks again for doing this one.
Thanks for having me. All right. Hello, everyone. I will actually start with a visual description, which is something I originally noticed in one of Bella Gaitan's presentations that she explained was a way to be more inclusive of people with vision impairments. And so I am a dark skinned Black woman with currently within earrings shaped like the continent of Africa. My hair is pulled up into an afro puff, and it is mostly black still, with many strands of white. I am wearing black rimmed glasses with clear bottoms and purple lipstick because purple is my color. Oh, I see Morgan also is a fan of the purple. So that's my visual description, and the background are bookshelves, a corner bookshelf, and some mementos from my teaching years, both here and abroad. With that, I would like to know a little bit about who you are watching. And so I just made a quick poll, and hopefully it will show up. Okay. And if you just kind of let me know where you're at right now. Are you currently a teacher? Are you from a non-teaching profession but looking into going into getting into L&D, already working in L&D, or living in that in between? Okay, I'll wait a few more seconds, but it looks like the in-betweeners are dominating. So now I'm really glad that I'm doing this topic because it seems like many are in that situation. All right. Let me close the poll and share my presentation with you. And I'm sure no one will be surprised to see that it is purple. Okay, so this is Navigating the In-Between. I'm Joelle Edouard, currently a professional learning developer and freelance editor. And I'll start with where I started, because if we're going to talk about the in-betweens, um, we need the start and the end, and then we go into the in-betweens. So, growing up, everyone but me knew I was going to be a teacher. Um, I was the kid that was forever teaching something to a friend or classmate. My nickname, one of my nicknames was Dico, which is French, is short in French for dictionary. Um, every time we took an aptitude test, my results looked like someone copied the thesaurus entry for teacher. But I was like, nope, definitely not. That's not for me. I should add that where I grew up in Switzerland, teachers are actually very highly respected. So when I said that wasn't for me, it wasn't a matter of I thought it was beneath me, but honestly, as a kid, I was not that fond of kids, even though I was one. So I thought, oh no, teaching sounds like a terrible choice, not doing it. Um, I really didn't start considering teaching until I was about halfway through undergrad. In fact, as a kid, at one point I wanted to be a mafia boss in the Italian mafia until my parents informed me that that would actually require being a criminal. The reason I wanted to be a mafia boss is because I heard the soundtrack to the Godfather movie, and I mean, I'm dating myself, I guess. But at that time, for your average elementary to middle school kid, that song was it. And I was like, I'm going to be an Italian mafia boss. And then my dad said, okay, so you're going to be a criminal. So then changed my mind, decided I was going to be an architectural engineer because I like looking at the parts behind everything, the how of everything is put together. And so I entered a very intense math and science program where I did fine. But I realized, wow, if I have to do this much math for the rest of my life, I'm probably going to have to gouge my eyes out with a spoon. So after that, I really didn't worry about it too much. Continued my schooling, moved to the US, actually in 10th grade. So, another fun fact, even though I taught middle school the most out of anything um, during my teaching years, I've never actually attended any kind of US middle school. So, I don't actually know what it's like to be a middle schooler here. But anyway, as things worked out, went to college, double majored in French and English at Rutgers University. And the reason I did major in education is basically originally I was interested in translation. Um, and hey, bonjour, someone speaks French there. And also, the other reason I didn't major in education is that the education scheduling pretty much should have precluded double majoring, which was something I really wanted to do. So I did the alternate route when I moved to Florida, and that's how I became a teacher. For all my fighting becoming a teacher, I actually had a really successful teaching career. I taught sixth grade. Oh gosh, no sixth grade. I can't do sixth grade, hence the oh gosh. Seventh grade is my lower age cutoff. But I did seventh grade ELA for 6 years at a pure middle school. And after that, went on to a grade 6 through 12 magnet school for the arts. There I taught all sorts of combinations of middle school ELA, high school ELA, French, creative writing. At one point, I had 5 different preps, and I didn't know which language I was teaching in, but it worked out fine. And eventually, I moved and spent 3 years teaching in Ivory Coast, in West Africa. And there I taught mostly English, middle, high school, and IB. As I was a teacher in Florida, and for those of you who know, that definitely requires having a second job. During 4 of my last teaching years of the US, I also had a side gig at my local Alliance Française, where I taught small group and private classes. And my oldest student there was 85 and was probably one of my best students. So I've definitely had some experience with a wide variety of age groups. So moving on to where I am now, um, I'm a professional learning developer. I'm a freelance editor, and I'm also somehow always a job seeker because I still really am looking for full-time work in L&D. It's just sometimes, the way you figure things out and the way they work out is not quite the same. Um, and so I thought this particular picture here was funny because the enter key says find job instead. And some mornings, that's just how I feel as I wake up and start going through my list of applications to do. I feel like all I'm doing is finding a job. So, anyway, this is me now. The picture is from a recent professional development workshop I did with my one of my current employers. We've been working on supporting a school district that is revising their curriculum for anti-bias and anti-marginalization, and really focusing on being inclusive of their students' backgrounds and perspectives. So, most recently, I co-facilitated a curriculum tune-up over 2 days with a colleague, and that's what that smiling picture is for from. Sorry, because that was a super fun workshop. But really, even though I haven't been in a K-12 classroom for over a year, as I mentioned earlier, didn't quite realize I transitioned until I suggested the session on this, and Louis mentioned me doing it, and I said, um, but don't people want to hear from people who actually transition? And several people in the producing committee, including Bella and Kayleen and Tara and Devin and several more, were like, so yeah, that's why you should do it. And so that really gave me a different perspective. And then I thought, maybe some people would benefit from hearing from me. So anyway, you didn't come here to hear my life story. You came to hear about the in between. So I'll kind of tell you a little bit about how that happened. So I mentioned that I was working in Ivory Coast in West Africa after I left the US. And there came a point where I decided, if I want to continue to grow, I need to move on to a bigger international school where I can have more challenges, more opportunities, to take on more responsibilities. I really wanted to get into instructional coaching because one of my favorite things while teaching has always been mentoring new teachers and helping them acclimate to the school and be successful. So I started applying to some targeted schools. I also wanted a school that had a very good support department because I have a very intense and complex child in many ways. So I needed the school to work for him as well. So that meant I applied to a very small number of schools, which is always risky. So fast forward to a little late in the hiring season for international schools, I get to the point where I have interviews with two top tier international schools. And I'm talking the kind of school where if you work there for even 2 years, after that you have your pick of schools. Everyone will hire you if you have one of those schools on your resume. So not only did I have interviews with both, they were actually going back and forth, fighting over me, which is not something I was used to having taught in Florida public schools. But anyway, so I was feeling just on top of the world. Like, no, there were midnight calls because they wanted to be first to move on to the next round of interviews. And so, oh, you'll notice random dance references because aside from purple, I'm also really into dance and dance things. So, by the end of that whole hiring cycle, I was feeling top of the world, like I was standing there in a Firebird costume receiving a standing ovation. Until things didn't quite land as gracefully as I expected, because that's usually how it goes, right? In fact, my landing looked more like less Firebird, more crashing. I think that's a pigeon. I don't know. At least I felt like a crashing pigeon. Um, Basically, as things went, I had to pull my son out of school and homeschool for a little while. Then the school that had hired me suddenly decided to rescind the offer, which would have not been that big a deal, except they did that 2 months after the offer, which is well after the hiring season has ended for international schools. So I was heartbroken between, the school thing where I felt my son was not made to feel like he belonged. And then this whole debacle, I was heartbroken. I said, teaching and I need a break. That's it. I'm done. I don't want anything to do with education for at least a year. I'm going to take a break, see if I can live without it. So I should add, normally, I'm the kind of person who's known for not only having a 5 year plan, but I usually have a 5 year plan that looks like a branching scenario. So, like, there's the 5 year plan A, but then there's plan B and C, and each one has a contingency plan. But as it worked out, none of my plan covered what happened. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do things differently, take a break. So that's when I got into all the pivoting. And so pivot, turn. And if you're a dancer, no, as you turn and you turn and you turn, you start getting concerned about getting dizzy. So my first pivot was actually courtesy of the very first teacher I mentored, 13 years ago when she was a brand new teacher. And I told her, you know what? I'm done with education. I hate everything. I this is it. I'm just not doing anything having to do with that. I'm never teaching again. I quit. And she said, wait, no, you can't do that. By the way, did you know there's this class I usually teach that I can't teach this summer? You should totally do that when you come back. Maybe it will rekindle your love for education. So I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Also, you know, money is nice because I enjoy food and shelter quite a bit. And so I figured, you know what, I'll teach that summer session and at least it will give me some cash and a little buffer so I have time to regroup, think, decide what I even want to do next, and move on. So I did that, and then I was like, I don't know about this college teaching, I mean, I enjoyed getting to, again, support teachers, but I mean, it's still very teachery. I don't know about that. So, same friend actually has a lovely consulting firm that is focused on equity in education. And she said, well, I see you haven't quite found what you want to do yet. I know you said you want to purely do L&D and you want nothing to do with education, but we have two schools that we support that we don't have anyone for. Can you do me a favor and do it? And so I want to pause here and say, she said do her a favor, but obviously I was struggling finding direction and she was doing me a favor. So as you transition, one thing is, listen to the people who have your best interests at heart because sometimes they'll see things in you and capacities in you that you don't see. So I started doing that, which I also enjoyed, and I thought of it as okay, well, so now I'm an educational consultant. And because of the way educational consultants had been brought into my district when I was teaching in Florida, I thought of it kind of great. I'm an educational consultant. Nobody's going to want to see me. And I'm probably being brought in to deal with teachers who would rather be doing anything but listening to me. As it turns out, the district she was working with was super supportive, and all the teachers involved were teachers who believe in equitable education and really wanted to be there. And so the experience was actually pleasing, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about, planning for groups, even though they were teachers, but they were not my personal colleagues. So I found that took a different level of planning than it did when I did PD at school, for example. Um, I also learned a lot more about working on curriculum that's not my curriculum. No, that's not curriculum for me. So I had to help design curriculum for teachers who teach grades and subjects that I've never taught. So that was another thing. And then I realized as my tax accountant, because if you teach internationally and then come back, you definitely don't want to do your own taxes that first year. So my tax accountant said, what are you doing now? I need that for my files. And so I pulled my contract and I saw, oh, wait, it doesn't say educational consultant. It actually says professional learning developer. So I would say part of me not finding myself in the transition was sometimes being so stuck on I want something that says LND and has that umbrella and has that specific type of title that I totally missed that I was moving in that direction. Which is ironic because as part of this particular job, I had to actually had to design virtual instructor-led materials, guides, and slide decks for a summer program about coding. Now, I know zero about coding. So that was an excellent experience in learning how to work with SMEs in subjects in which I have no expertise. Um, so there's that. So then, because again, like I said, I like food and shelter, I was like, well, I still don't have a full time job, and money doesn't seem to just magically appear here. So maybe I should actually start getting paid for all the editing I do. Um, which started because I did some editing for someone as a favor, and they said, "Oh, do you take unpaid gigs?" Referred someone. I did that, and then I ended up doing more of them. Um, and I've tried to be strategic about looking for clients that allow me some more insight into L&D or into instructional design. So, for example, right now I'm heavily working on editing some bilingual content in for an e-learning developer, but that allows me to see what their scripts look like, how e-learning scripts are organized. I have a lot of interaction with the globally distributed team, so there's that. And then I also, during the pandemic, started volunteering with this Facebook online community that's about um, bringing acceptance and diversity to the dance world. And I found this to be a place where, as the group kind of grew very quickly from when I started helping out, we had maybe 80,000 members. And then 2 months later, we had 100,000. And here we are about a year and a half later from that point, and we're at 370,000 members. So originally, this group was run by the founder and his wife. The group is called Dance Accepts Everyone, for those of you who are dance people. And so it was run by this man and his wife, and then they ran into this problem of we can't do this with just the two of us. So I said, yeah, I can help. So then we got a small team of moderators, and things weren't quite getting done well. And so I thought, hey, there's a problem I can solve. I'm going to see if they would like some training, because based on my analysis, the reason things aren't being done in the way that the founder wants them to be done is really because half of these people have no idea what he's asking. And so, having determined that problem, I took some surveys, did some interviews, and then I started creating some small trainings for them. Actually, some of my portfolio items are from that. Most of them I'm revising now that I have somewhat better skills, which, by the way, as many of you have heard at the tables and in the several presentations, that is something to keep in mind. Um, your your portfolio should be ever evolving. Okay, so it should showcase your skills as they grow. Just like for your students who have portfolios, it's not a standstill. You expect it to show the growth that they've had. So those are all the different roles that kind of appeared in my various pivots. And so to keep with this dance idea, dancers, when they're turning and turning and turning, are told to spot. And spotting is how you don't get dizzy. And what that means is, even as you're turning, you keep your eye on the place where you're going. And so, as you face back, the last thing you see should be that spot. And as you're coming back around, the first thing you see should be that spot again. And so, I think that applies to messy transitions as well, because there were definitely times in all this where I had my pity party and my self talk that sounded maybe in ways that I would not allow myself to talk to other people. but I was certainly talking to myself in that way, putting myself down. You'll never manage this. What are you doing? Your child is going to starve to death because you're never going to find a job. What is wrong with you? I had all those moments. But I found that if I kept my eye on the spot, on that ultimate goal, then I was able to take the pieces of all those other things and start to pull what I could use to move forward and to move in the direction that I wanted to move. Yeah. Okay, so that was a lot just about me. So, how about the stuff that's useful for you? Here are the things that I learned um, during my transition, and I would love to hear, as I go through this, I'd love to hear as you see these lessons and these ideas, which ones can you specifically apply to your current situation? Um, so, number one for me was to figure out my milestones, but remain flexible. What do I mean by that? First of all, when I started researching potential jobs, of course, like everybody else, I knew L&D was kind of the direction I wanted to go. But then within that, I kept seeing, for me, actually, instructional design and UX research. So I thought, okay, maybe I could do one of those. Tried through some volunteering to do some UX research, and I thought, I like parts of that, but probably not the whole process. And then ID, was everywhere. Everybody wants to be an instructional designer. It's like everyone wants to be the prima ballerina. It seems in L&D, all you hear about is instructional design. And so, like many, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And so, when I didn't quite get to that, I felt like I failed. And then I realized, well, actually, do I really, really want to do that? Um, which is where volunteering, circling back to that, comes into play. I've had the opportunity to do some volunteering um, with the group Teaching a Path to Learning and Development that's run by Sarah Stevick, who was presenting yesterday. If you didn't see her presentation, definitely rewatch that or watch the replay, I should say. But as I'm doing that work also, I realized, well, there's work there that I enjoy, but maybe not all of it. Like, I really like the analysis. I really like the looking at the problem and planning a solution. I've really enjoyed project planning and the various iterations of that, storyboarding and the iterations of that. Um, and between that and my volunteering with Dance Accepts Everyone, I've also created some, training videos um, those mostly for Dance Accepts Everyone. I'm working on some e-learning as well. But ultimately, I find that that part of it, I'm like, I could take it or leave it. So while I'm still looking for full-time work within L&D, there are now very few jobs listed as instructional designer that I actually apply for, because I'm realizing that unless that company's instructional design plays to those strengths, that's not necessarily what I want to do. So that's one lesson I learned. Have milestones, have those goals, but don't be afraid to tweak them and change them. That's part of growth. Titles are not the most important thing. So that goes back to the instructional designer thing. I've seen some instructional designer job descriptions where I said, yes, I'm applying to that. Um, Look at all these things they talk about. They want a strong writer. They're looking for someone who can really create content that would be appropriate for different audiences, I can do that. Oh, collaborate with me. That will be like 50% of the yes. Give me more of those. And then I see some that have the exact same title and every line on theirs. So you should be able to storyline and storyline while storylining and preferably storyline. I'm like, yeah, that's gonna be a pass for me. So don't get hung up on the titles. In fact, I'm currently waiting to hear back on two second round interviews I had a couple days ago. So waiting to hear if I move to the final round. And both of them are actually under that company's L&D, which they call education training. Neither of them's instructional design, but both of them have parts of the process or elements that you would find, for example, in the ADDIE framework. So titles are not the most important thing. Next, have a self care plan. Oh my goodness. I so wish that I had seen Mike Venny's presentation that he did on Monday here like a year ago. That would have made such a difference for me because like I laugh and joke about it, but honestly, there were some rough times. There were definitely a couple times where I took some editing jobs that I was not excited about at all, that were super tedious, not really in my preferred wheelhouse, simply because I was like, oh my gosh, I have to make money right now because my bank balance is frowning at me. And so I feel that being intentional about learning how to cope with uncertainty is another super important fact. In fact, I saved an article um, that resonated with me that I'll drop in the chat that has some tips about dealing with uncertainty. And for me, I think one of the most important points they made was one of the tips they give is don't believe everything you think. And that really resonated with me because, as I've mentioned, sometimes mentally I talk to myself in ways that I would not find acceptable to talk to anybody else. And I find that it's easy to get into that hole when you're dealing with uncertainty because you feel like you don't have control. So I dropped the article in the chat. I hope that will be useful for you as well. Phew. Next, find community and engage. Notice it's a two-parter. It's not just find community. Um, for me, I joined LinkedIn and I thought, ooh, look at all these fancy, accomplished people, and why am I here? And maybe I should crawl back into my room. And then first I joined TPLD, which Kayleen was kind enough to drop the link for. That's Teaching a Path to Learning and Development, which was such and is such an excellent, supportive community. Everything in there was positive. I swear, sometimes I will see the same questions I know I asked a year ago being asked in the group. And this is not the kind of place where you'll find people say, uh, did you like run a search? Don't you already know this? No matter how many times the questions get asked, there's always someone there willing to help. Now, while there, I think the very first person to engage with me was Heidi Kirby, who presented earlier today and is awesome. Definitely rewatch her presentation as well. And she was presenting at a previous event that that TDLC, this community, was putting on, also about getting into L&D and transitioning. And so I watched that. The replay for all of those sessions is also available. I highly suggest that you check those out. And, I've been in this community ever since, but I find that it only works if you engage. So, for example, I've been in the Slack channel, as Lewis mentioned, and I did for a little bit get a little imposter syndrome, like, I don't know that I want to participate. If you have issues with that, rewatch Devin's presentation from yesterday. Um, and everybody again was so welcoming. And so when Louis said, I'm putting this event together, does anyone want to help? I thought, probably not me. And I say, you know what? I'm going to help. And then next thing you know, well, here I am. So the engagement is important because this is really where you'll learn the most, in my opinion. But that's also how you get something out of the community without being a user. And I always feel nervous about asking people for help, reaching out, because I'm afraid to be that I'm using and taking and taking and taking. But I find that if you engage in a way that's authentic, then it's really a give and take. Um, this one, that's just me being honest, get creative about money. Um, I've taken things under editing that really weren't editing. I've done some very random writing gigs. Um, I've I don't know how many Kickstarter pages I've rewritten for people. Um, all these. I did some test scoring, I think, for a testing company, and I also learned to barter. For example, I cut, of course, a lot of expenses when I started transitioning. But I need to dance, and I have my one dance class that I've been taking most consistently for, I don't know, 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years or so. And I got to the point where I thought, if I want to continue searching and be in this transition with the most flexibility, I don't know that I can afford it. So I told the teacher, who's also a friend, and she said, well, didn't you say you're like doing curriculum and training stuff and all of that? And I said, yeah. It's like, well, I've been needing for someone to make me like a guide of how I can plan and organize my dance curriculum, so that I'm not just trying to catch the pieces at the end of each session. Do you know how to do that? And I said, I sure do. I said, okay, well, how much do people usually charge for that? So I gave her what I thought was a reasonable rate. And she said, well, then perfect. So tell me how many hours you think this project will take you. And then we'll basically just barter. So get creative. Um, because, I mean, maybe that's not a worry for all, but I find that if you don't, if you find ways to make the money you need, even if it's the bare minimum, mind you, then you have more flexibility in choosing what you want to do next. Like for me, I knew that if I went back to a Florida K-12 classroom, there is no way that I would be able to be as intentional with what I want as I get to be now, that I'm flexible because I can kind of manage how many clients I take at a time. Also, explore unexpected places. Um, for example, as I said, when I joined the Dance Accepts Everyone group and agreed to become a moderator, honestly, it was just this guy. I felt, the group was valuable to me. And he said, oh my gosh, we have like hundreds of thousands of members now and we can't manage. I thought, oh, sure, I'll help. And as it turns out now, there's definitely been occasions where something outside of the volunteering scope pops up. And so I'll be asked to run or design something for the group and, get paid for that separately. And so just keep your eyes open, because for me, I felt like I was missing seeing opportunities to build the skills that fit under L&D. And I do think that's valuable, because in that recent interview I mentioned, no matter how it ends up turning out, one of the things the interviewer said in that second round was, I really appreciate how you have this varied background and knowledge base, because that lets us know that you would be flexible and able to adjust to our different projects. And sometimes you hear, well, if you're not laser focused, nobody will trust you. And it was good to hear that other perspective. And lastly, get the most out of where you are right now. And that's what I do. When I'm doing my editing for the e-learning provider, I sure do take notes, and I sure do ask questions like, hey, I've noticed, for all your scripts that you use this, and that. Why is that? And now that's something that I know about writing e-learning scripts. Or I've asked the SMEs that I edit for feedback on the way I give them feedback. So that's something I can use, and that's an example I can then present in in an interview, for example. Or heck, I've learned how to use Smartsheet now, so that's one more skill. But if all I was focused on was, well, I don't have a full-time job with a title of something something in the L&D department, therefore I failed, I would be missing all those little things. Likewise, with the Dance Accepts Everyone group, as we near 400,000 members and we have other things happening, I get to say, hey, do you think we could use a training on this? Or can I create a video for this subgroup of members that wants to know blank? Um, or simply I get to manage some people that are new to the team. So these are all things I can take with me to whatever is next. So, of course, I'm still going to be nervous as I wait to hear if I get to that final round of interview for either or both of those two jobs I just interviewed for. And of course, after I leave here, I'm probably going to pop at tables and then um, go do more applications, because don't stop applying just because you're at the first, second, or even final round of interview. But I'm making sure to get the most out of where I am right now, which is, I guess, sort of the in between. um, and I have talked a lot, and so hopefully you found it useful. um, I very much appreciate you coming in today. You can find me on LinkedIn pretty easily when there's not a huge number of Joelle Edouards apparently out there. I hope you found this useful. Please, if you have any questions, now would be a great time. Or I definitely invite you, if you found any of the lessons useful or that they resonated with you, definitely um, let us know what you're planning to do with them. Let us know which ones you think you can apply right now. And feel free, again, as I said, to reach out on LinkedIn, whether it's today or in a week or months from now, if any of those lessons are useful to you. Please let me know. Hey, Joelle, just want to let you know I did blank and it's worked out for me. And so I hope that you get to enjoy the time in the in between. Um, and that's it. Thanks. so much for having me.
Yeah,
And
Joelle, it's been great. You just gave us so much to think about. And here's the thing that I just realized. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to post them in chat and or in the QA area. But to be honest, TLDC was kind of a transition thing for me.
huh,
Like when I first started it, I had left another job in L&D, and then I'm like, okay, I still want to stay in touch with the people that I've met in this, in this space, and I want to continue doing certain things and just, exploring whatever. How can I do that? I know I'll just build something, and that way I can stay in touch with everybody and all that. And but now it's been on 5 years now, still transitioning, but it's established itself. And so yeah, I mean, for anybody else out there, that's something to consider. If you can't figure out something, just build it. And
well,
yeah,
luckiest that you did.
yeah, yeah. No, and another thing, my camera is not working, so that's why I don't have my video on. Sorry, I actually ordered a new camera last night because this is a problem. But I do appreciate you giving us all of this to think about, Joelle. Really, really wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Sure. All right. I am not seeing any questions come up. Just lots
All
of
right.
great session and all of these
Thanks, everyone.
compliments. It's been wonderful. All right, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and close the session out. Don't forget, we've got, let's see, we've got virtual tables going. Let's see, sorry.
Ooh, awesome sessions tomorrow
And
too.
tomorrow,
There's
yes. So
networking.
exactly. Um, yeah, tomorrow could be an event all of its own, because we've got 4 sessions. You've got this incredible networking one with Bela that starts out the day. The panel, Inside the Mind of a Hiring Manager, with Tom McDowell, and Kara's going to be back for that. Heidi Kirby and Gemma, I can't remember her last name, another hiring manager from the UK, I believe, that Tom is going to have on. And then more virtual tables. And then we're talking with Ashley Chiason about building your e-learning portfolio. You definitely want to stick around for that. And then more virtual tables. And then we're ending the day with Lainey talking about the language of ID.
Oh yeah.
And so this one's more of one focus for especially teachers, like moving into instructional design and the corporate world and getting some of that terminology down. So yeah, with that, see you on the tables. See you tomorrow. Thanks again, Joelle.
Thank you. See ya.
We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.